Peace, family. I had a friend of mine send me a meme, and it was a picture of red ants and black ants living in a jar. And it said they can live together in peace and harmony until someone shakes the jar. And that's when the ants accuse each other and start fighting. The moral of the story was the black ants represent black people, red ants represent white people. And we're supposed to be able to live in peace and harmony until somebody outside the jar, outside the community, or in charge of the community shakes the jar. The fact of the matter is this. There has never been a historical record of black and white people living in peace and harmony. When I told this to another friend of mine, and she was like, "Oh, Jonathan, I love how that story go." I said, "You do?" She's like, "Yeah. I just hope that we can live together." I said, "I'm going to destroy this message in the video." And she said, "Jonathan, please don't, because I want to believe that we can." I don't care about your feelings. Not when it comes to this. I'm going to tell you the truth. And the fact of the matter is, I don't care what year you go to. There's never been a year when red and black ants or black and white people live together in peace and harmony. You know, there would be, if there were, there would be a historical record documented. Why isn't there? If blacks and whites had a history of living together in peace and harmony, why wasn't a scenario duplicated over the last 400 years so that we can realize it? We don't have to just envision it in some type of meme and then just hope that one day we can it's never going to happen. You know, and see, people who put stuff out like this, there's always some boogeyman that's rattling the cage between blacks and whites. It's never the white person. There's always some boogeyman. You got red and black ants living in a jar, living in peace and harmony, until somebody, unidentified, shakes the jar. Well, the red and black ants represent black people, and the red ants represent white people. What color is the ant that's shaking the jar? What color is the ant that has the power and authority to shake the jar? Or better yet, what color is the ant that don't have the power and authority to shake the jar? How are they living so close together? So while one color ant got all the power and authority and the other one don't. Even if this scenario was true, and I'm going to take it like as if it was true, what power and authority would the black ants living in the jar have over their way of life? Or they constantly have to force themselves into the red ants' schools, the red ants' businesses, the red ants' politics, the red ants' courts, where they control everything. If you were a black ant, would you want to live with red ants in that type of scenario? Always got to seek permission or allowance from red ants in order to be whatever you want to be, in order to stay whatever you want to stay. All the red ants control the who, what, when, and where. You be whatever you be. What black ant want to live in a society like that? Let me further decimate this scenario or this good white people notion that this is what this thing is ultimately trying to put out there. Back in slavery times, when you had reportedly 1% of white people who owned slaves and 99% who did not. If that was the case, if that was 100% true, if 1 out of 100 slaves was white people owned slaves and the 99 did not, what would be the odds of two slave owners living next door to each other? It'd be slim to none. If that were true, 1 out of every 100 white people owned slaves. Why, if a slave escaped, why did they have to avoid the presence of every white person they come across and escape all the way to the north? If 1 out of every 100 white people were actually slave owners. You would think that once they got off that plantation, they could seek shelter anywhere. Let me further prove my point. If someone was held captive in a home and they were being raped and beaten and forced to work for free in somebody's basement and had been kept there for months, and one day they were able to escape, they could run straight to a neighbor's house. They could run into the first stranger they seen in the streets and feel comfortable they could get help. Why? Because people aren't routinely locking people up or sympathizing with this person because they know he's locking them up. They're going to get you out of there and get you away and get you back home. If 1 out of every 100 white people own slaves, how come a slave couldn't go from one plantation to the next farm over and find help? You will have that one slave owner. He will have 99 homes to look for his runaway slave. Slavery wouldn't have lasted a weekend if that was the case. I believe the situation was reversed. I believe 99% of whites either owned or participated in the continuation of slavery, and you had 1% of white people who did not. And that 1% I don't even register with me. Because the reason why I say it was the reverse, when the slave escaped, and you only had one white person out of 100 that owned slaves, where did all the other white people come from that went to catch the slaves? Where did they come from? Why did they have to avoid the presence of every white person as they escaped to the north? When you look at the 1% of whites that own slaves, where did the votes come from that passed the law that benefited the slave owners? When the slaves come off the plantation, if you step 1 foot off that plantation when they set you free, they're going to arrest you for being a vagrant and leash you right back into the hands of the enslaver. How did 1% of white people manage to get the votes to pass that law into effect? Where did all these white people come from that passed that bill? Why wasn't it stopped in Congress? Why didn't the police refuse to enforce it? Where are all these white people coming from if only 1% of white people own slaves? Where did all the white people come from that fought the war that wanted to continue slaves if only 1% of whites own slaves? How did this is a busy 1%. Not only are they able to hold these slaves captive, rape them, beat them, they're able to pass laws, legislation, enforce the laws, and fight a war all out this 1%. Like I said, it's this notion that it's some boogeyman that's causing a trouble between blacks and whites. There is no boogeyman. Or there is a boogeyman, and he's always been white. See, if they want to let you think some boogeyman is some unknown, uncolored person, they don't know who it is. I know exactly who it is. It's the boogeyman that's been on our back for the last 400 to 500 years. If there was evidence of blacks and whites living together in peace and harmony, somebody would have documented it. Don't disagree with this video. Don't disagree with this message just because you want to disagree with it. Signify me a date and time where this has happened. Because to me, white people are not our historical enemy. They are our forever enemy. They will always be your enemy. And when it comes to my pupils, when it comes to telling you the truth, I'm always going to put facts over your feelings.